Text Club is full at 35270. Don't worry, I'll make some more room for your thoughts and get to those in a moment about the Iowa caucus. But there was something that caught my attention, and it was reported at Chicago, and I wanted to bring it home here, in part because when we've talked about vehicles and the trends of which things are going, whether we like it or not, everything in between, there, I think, are legitimate concerns when it comes to electric vehicles. Even for those that enjoy and own all that, of cold weather, of hauling. And right now, it reported out of Chicago is because of this cold snap, some of those electric vehicles are dying either at the supercharging stations, and guess what? They're packed, so you can't get them in. And it just sounds like it's a nightmare. In particular, the ones that they're talking about in Chicago have been Teslas. But with that being said, it's just a general, okay, is it actual cold weather? What do we do as far as the mechanic goes for just electric vehicles? And we reached out to, well, our friend and somebody you hear now as the mechanic is in on It Takes Two, Chirs Higgins, Johnson's Auto Repair, joining us right now here on Afternoons Live. Chris, I appreciate it, my man. How you been?
Hey, not too bad there, neighbor. How you been, Tyler?
Doing well. It's not so bad. It's been damn cold out, and it's impacted vehicles out there. I'm curious, over where you work with Johnson's Auto Repair, do you guys do a whole lot with electric vehicles?
Unfortunately, not yet.
Yeah.
With our market and a lot of the EV market, a lot of that stuff is still going to be covered by the manufacturer and dealer warranty for the most part.
Sure.
Our area obviously is, very small percentage in the EV market. Now, we do service a fair amount of hybrids too. There are a few of them out there too, with the gas and the high voltage battery setup. So
when it comes to your line of work, is it changing how you prepare? And what I mean is, okay, you can go to you get your education for a diesel mechanic and for a different line of mechanics. And now you're introducing what I would assume, and I could certainly be wrong. People like to tell me I'm wrong all the time, that on a variety of things, not just vehicles, of you're going to have a different understanding of how I think things talk to each other, how they work. Is that accurate, or am I off?
You're 100% correct, Tyler. That's one reason my passion for this industry too is I'm learning every day, and I'm wrong every day too. So that's always nice. But
we got that in common, huh?
Well, yeah, no kidding. My wife will probably agree as well. But what I like about the cars, as far as the technician side of it, especially for somebody that keeps up on up-to-date training and stuff like that, I'm always watching different training videos and listening to different podcasts. But in the past 10 years, the modules, and I think we've touched on this before, even in just your standard internal combustion engine car has increased probably by 3 times from an average of 5 or 6, 10 or 15 years ago to, anywhere from 20 to 30 modules on a vehicle now. Everything's becoming a module, and that's the case with EV as well.
So when I'm looking in Chicago, and the headline, because it was, from a news source out there, was actually their local Fox affiliate, saying that there's no juice, and I can't get it charged because, I'm waiting here. What are you hearing about cold weather and these electric vehicles? Because whenever we broach the subject on this talk show, I get the cold weather we have here. I mean, you think about plugging in a vehicle back in the day, right? If it got below zero, so I mean, there's some of that fear that they're not going to be able to retain their power in these cold weather, or if I'm trailering the camper up the Devil's Lake, it's not going to be able to get there all the way. You as a mechanic, what do you hear about those two issues?
And you're 100% correct on that. What I like to, when people bring up the topic of EV, now, I'm not preaching for or against EV here, but the typical EV, let's say you're going to go the EV route. It's essentially a lifestyle. You're going to have to be kind of mindful, where you're going, what time you're going to have to plan your route. Just as if you were to go to the grocery store, you're like, hey, I'm going to go there for my list, stick to the list and go home. Same thing with an EV. And in the winter months, what you got to kind of keep in mind, like with our gas vehicles, once we get our vehicle running, essentially, the fuel takes over and the alternator maintains our battery. Well, with the EV battery, when people are plugging in to charge their high voltage battery, that high voltage battery also through various inverters or converters, if what have you, they maintain a 12-volt battery also that helps keep your heaters and your HVAC and all your your driver amenities operable, because not everything uses the high voltage battery, but something needs to maintain the 12-volt battery too. So like areas like Chicago, you got a heavy urban area, right? Population's up there. And I'm just assuming this is probably what's happening, but people aren't what I'd like to call conditioning their EV. They're buying an EV, they're excited to have an EV, right? But they don't exactly have the proper place to store it. It's sitting outside all the time. And when you're outside all the time, they might not all have the level 2 chargers or the fast chargers, and they might have just like the one that came with the car sometimes. It's like a 110 that plugs in. Well, people are finding out is that normal one, that 110 one, especially if your battery's in the sub-zero temperatures, that's barely enough power to keep the heaters to get the high voltage battery to an optimal temperature to accept a high voltage charge. So a lot of it's not all the EV's fault. It's kind of how it's designed. A lot of it is just the unfortunate conditions that just aren't, for lack of a better term, optimum for, a complete 100% electric vehicle.
Yeah, it's interesting because what you had just relayed is what I kind of read in response to this. The Chicago Auto Trader, or the Auto Trade Association, echoed what you just said about the conditioning of that vehicle. Because
Yep.
I would be, Chris, you know me well enough that I would be that guy that if I had to go buy one, I'm plugging it in, I'm thinking I'm getting up and I'm going, I'm gone. That's not the case
Right.
here. This isn't, I'm not throwing in, just a take a gas and getting up to where I want to go. This is, like you say, a different lifestyle that you have to adapt to before you just take the dive, so to speak.
Nope, 100% correct. And even on the hot end of the spectrum, there's that sweet spot where the ambient temp outside might be 70 to 80 degrees, because that high voltage battery likes to be between about 85 to 90 to 120 degrees for optimal charging and health of the battery. It's just like even with our normal, internal combustion engine vehicles up here. If you park your vehicle inside and keep it 40 or higher, your battery is going to your 12-volt battery is going to last, 4 to 6 years. If it's parked outside all the time, even if you plug it in, that just warms up your coolant or your engine block or your engine oil to make it easier to turn over. But you're probably only going to get 2 to 3 years of life out of your battery when we have when we get to these severe temperatures like this in the wintertime. Freezing those batteries and stuff, it kind of affects the chemical reaction, and the electrolytes in the battery, and it's just not good for them.
Chirs Higgins, our guest, Johnson's Auto Repair. You can catch him on It Takes Two monthly during The Mechanic is In. EVs, they're coming is what we've been told, whether people like them or not. And I'm not asking you whether you're for or against it. It doesn't matter. But as far as your industry goes, is that what you hear too, that the market is going towards this way? We don't know when it'll be, I guess, I don't know how to put this, more in the norm than the exception here. Do you have a time frame, or is it just, hey, be prepared because we know that this is the future?
The best thing I can say is just kind of be prepared, and everybody, I encourage everyone to do their own research, right? Don't get scared about it. It's not something that's going to come, barreling down our door tomorrow where you're going to have to get one. I can speak probably generally for all the manufacturers that, even though they got their foot in the water and they're heavily testing on EV, they're pumping the brakes on it too. My professional opinion, we have a long way to go as far as the infrastructure and to make it more, maybe cost effective or practical, especially for the area we live in. Mm-hmm. Not saying it's not practical for different areas of the country already, but we got a little ways to go before, I worry about it completely taking over our area. But, don't forget about it. It's like technology and anything else, it's not going to go anywhere, but there's always room for improvement. So.
I did get a question in for you. You mentioned that you haven't seen as many EVs because of this part of the country. It hasn't really, taken up more of the streets, but you have with hybrids. And this message for you, Chris. Could your guest please explain the difference between EV and hybrid vehicles? I've had a Prius for years, and all of a sudden within the last couple of years, I keep getting asked how often I get stranded. I'm so surprised by the number of people who don't understand the distinction. So just quickly, if you can, my friend, difference between EV and a hybrid.
EV is fully electric. It has to be plugged in. A hybrid vehicle usually has an engine on board to help maintain the high voltage battery. So difference is EV, plug-in, hybrid, can start and run. So.
Very good. Chris, this was fun. I'm jealous now that you're joining It Takes Two, but just make sure you answer when we call here on Afternoons Live. You take care till next time, all right?
Yeah, thanks, Ted. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. You take care. Chris Higgins, again, our friend, and you can catch him as the mechanic now on It Takes Two, Johnson's Auto Repair over in Moorhead. Lots of messages in on this and a variety of other things at 35270. I'm coming back to you and your calls and your texts right after this on KFGO.